Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today. We're so excited to talk about the zoo. We love talking about the zoo. The zoo doesn't always like us talking about the zoo, but we do enjoy talking about the zoo and what's happening there. Now, today's show is focused on trying to demystify all of these different acronyms and things that you see with the zoo. It always appears to have this very professional look. And what does it mean? Who are the zoos? What is a zoo accreditation? And why does it matter, or does it? Is it an illusion, or is it really helping the animals and the welfare and the way that things run? So the exciting thing is today we're going to have our good friend and special guest, Mr. Jeff Kremer, to join us, who will give us a firsthand knowledge of what this world is like. But before we begin, quickly, I just wanted to bring up, we were watching Planet of the Apes. I don't know if anybody's seen the new movie. We were watching the original one just the other night, and I was curious to see what everybody's thoughts were about that movie. I've always loved the movie. I think it's a fascinating look at how so far it's been one of the best attempts to try to gain empathy for the plight of captivity in animals. And anyway, it had so many brilliant lines in it. If you haven't rewatched the old one, I highly recommend it. It was amazing to see. The reason that we were watching Planet of the Apes is we've been thinking primates, a lot about primates. Harambe Day is coming up. Harambe Day is May 28th. And Harambe Day internationally, the world is going to speak up for our closest living relatives that are in captivity and help us try to shed more light on why this practice may have happened before, but maybe it isn't really that great of an idea now, and try to find out. So we were curious, what has happened in Cincinnati since Harambe was killed, unfortunately, May 28th, 2016. And we wanted to find out, here we go. So we took a look at Born Free USA. Now, they have an amazing, amazing webpage. You can go to their website, and at the very top, you can find there's an exotic incidents database. So you can go to this database, and here we chose Ohio, any years. Let's see what happened in Ohio before and after Harambe. So in 1996, just to start it with, the Cincinnati Zoo, the 7-year-old daughter of the zoo education director was mauled by a Bengal tiger. So that's the beginning of the incidents there. And as you can see on the screen, there's been many incidents since then. Some of them are rescues, like a 6-foot Burmese python was found, although, they were able to step in, but all these incidents come through. So, okay, thank you. So, here we go. All right, well, for some reason, it is not appearing. Can you guys see it now? No? Okie dokie. Well, forget about that. All right, so real fast, I wanted to say there are so many incidents that are happening that why are this happening all the time? So this is where the accreditation comes in. This is where what is supposed to be the gold standard in zoo and animal welfare keeping is happening. So we're about to bring on Jeff Kremer to hear the actual words of what it's really like. But first, I wanted to share with you something very interesting that we have discovered. And we thought, what is the need to be an inspector? Who are these AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums? Who inspects these facilities? So what we learned while looking at it is that the people that inspect are people that can only work at an AZA accredited institution, be in current good standing, have the institution like them, and have worked in middle to upper management at the institution. So as we talk about this today, please keep in mind that the AZA giving out an accreditation comes from an AZA sponsored person. So it's somewhat like Congress investigating Congress, and to me it removes a lot of the credibility that we see with this. But again, that is just what we found there. So very excited now. We're very, very excited to bring on our guest today, Mr. Jeff Kremer, who will talk to us today about how accreditation works with the zoos. Hey, Jeff.
How's it doing, Eric?
Great. Good to see you. Look, we're two bald guys. We got some flower pattern shirts on.
Yeah, better put some powder on the head that shines too. Yeah.
That's right. I got to get a little better lighting.
No, loved your intro and the realities. Most people don't realize it probably that the people inspecting AZA zoos are, and same for ZAA, are their own members.
Right, and that's yeah. It's so now that does lead to so many questions of what can we trust. So to begin with, we'll tell our audience, the AZA, you'll hear that often. The AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, is supposed to be a gold standard. Now, Jeff, when you were with your experience in the zoo world, what did AZA mean, and how did it manifest in a way, or how did you see it around the zoo?
Yeah, no, I mean, you and I both probably agree that we're not zoo supporters, but at the same time, you can't. It's not all black or white; it's gray. So having an accreditation, some form of accreditation, is better than having no accreditation, even if they're self-accrediting, self-inspecting. It's better to have AZA is better than ZAA, the Zoological Association of America, and both of those are better than Roadside Zoos. Doesn't mean that I'm going to support any of the three categories or EAZA, but it is, if somebody's going to go visit a zoo, it's better to have them go visit an AZA accredited zoo than a roadside zoo. So I'd rather have them visit an accredited sanctuary than a zoo, but you got to start somewhere. I actually, during my tenure at our zoo in Tampa, AZA accredited zoo in Tampa, we actually went through one of the 5-year rounds of AZA inspection, and I was in management at the time, so I was well versed in what was going on. And AZA inspectors are going to inspect every detail from fiscal to enclosures to every aspect of the zoo operations, and they have their own set of standards, so they're going to be comparing to that. But it's really just a team of AZA employees, like you said, higher management, going around and inspecting all AZA accredited institutions on a 5-year basis.
So every 5 years, they'll get the inspection to make sure that they're up to the standards that the AZA has decided. Now, that does sound like a very good plan. Where did you find, how did you find it that it worked? Did they come in and, for example, were there changes maybe afterwards where animal welfare aspects were considered that hadn't been considered previously, or what sort of changes were implemented?
I could probably equate it to, because we've, when we sold our house, in the last few years and relocated, it's kind of akin to like when you go to sell your house, you take in the last few months, you take care of everything you really should have taken care of for the last 10 years. It's like, let's catch up really quick. And that's the way it was at our zoo. It was probably the 6 months leading up to the AZA inspection where we were just rushing to get everything cleaned up and tidied up and everything put in order, everything we could, that really, if you were running a business and wanted to run it the correct way, you would have taken care of those things along the way over the last 5 years. But a lot of businesses, including animal businesses, are reactive. They're not proactive. So, I'll give you a funny example of, we had to make everything safe and pretty. So, we had a department entrusted with making sure everything was maintenance and clean and sanitary. And we had pressure washers, but they wanted to pressure wash all the wooden boardwalks, and they wanted to pressure wash everything to make it tidy. So we pretty much rented almost every pressure washer in the city of Tampa at the last minute to clean everything up really quick. Where it would have been nice if you had a plan all along for the last 5 years to take care of things in maintenance. And that's sadly, that's not just boardwalks. That's maintenance all the way down to mechanical, mechanisms that are running life support systems for animal enclosures, things like that. So.
Interesting. Well, that's interesting because you don't really think about a lot of those smaller aspects as well. When people go to the zoo, I think they assume a certain level of security and safety, which in the Harambe incident showed us that so sometimes even with an AZA inspection, and they had just been inspected, I believe, I want to say like a few months before, not by the USDA, but by the AZA. The AZA said everything's fine.
Mhm.
The incident happened. The USDA said, "What? Hey, this was never fine."
Yeah.
And it's an interesting difference kind of in there. Did you find that AZA standards was there talk of them being different than say USDA standards?
Yeah, certainly they're looking at different things. Those inspectors for the USDA are looking at different things than the AZA inspectors would be looking at. And I think my experience, my personal experience, um, I think both in the zoo world and the sanctuary world, the accredited sanctuary world was, it really depends on what inspectors you have. I've interacted with some USDA inspectors that, I thought I held to high esteem, that were very credible. I've also had interaction with USDA inspectors that I think, I was not aligned with their mission, vision, and their attention to detail. And I found that the same recently when I've been working with Florida Fish and Wildlife in the state of Florida, reporting some big cat violations that violated not only Florida Fish and Wildlife regulations, but they also have been submitted to U.S. Fish and Wildlife for suspected violations of the Big Cat Public Safety Act. And I've worked with a couple of inspectors that were just spot on, really due diligent. And I've worked with some that had absolutely no, I can quote, somebody in the inspection work in one of those special agents that absolutely has no idea what any of these roadside zoos are about. They didn't know what big cat rescue was. If you don't know, if you've not even heard of big cat rescue and the good, the bad, the whatever, all the publicity from Tiger King, then you're really not well versed in what we're hoping you're looking for as far as infractions that for animal welfare and human safety.
Now, since the Big Cat Safety Act's been passed, I know that you've been very vigilant in keeping an eye on what's going on around there, and I've seen you bring up, create attention for a lot of different causes that are happening out there. So this is a great moment to kind of discuss the AZA versus, like, say, a roadside zoo, because in Tiger King we were able to learn mostly focused on roadside zoos, and they're in a lot of ways. People have almost more access to them. I don't know if they have cheaper tickets than regular zoos, having never even been near one really. But I'm curious, when it comes to that, have you seen the changes coming, and how have you seen the roadside zoos? Have they disappeared, or what can you tell us about the state of that now?
Yeah, so I think that, again, not to be black or white. So in the AZA accredited world, I've seen behaviors change since the Big Cat Public Safety Act passed. I've seen their, as recent as 3 or 4 years ago, I was documenting, well, they have a really exploitative ambassador animal department from cheetah species all the way on down to the reptiles and small primates. But as recent as 3 or 4 years ago, I was documenting some AZA accredited facilities that actually, for VIPs, let them interact with baby tiger, leopard, and tiger and lion cubs. They're not doing that any longer, right? But roadside zoos, the 3 cases I worked with recently in Florida, 2 in which I'll give you an example. They're completely unaccredited roadside zoos. One in northern Florida called Bear Creek Feline Center, Bear Creek Feline, where they actually let guests, their niche for selling encounters is you can stand outside an enclosure and hand feed a full-grown cougar or mountain lion from the outside. Now, you're out the outside the enclosure, but you're hand feeding it raw meat, which was supposedly against Florida Fish and Wildlife regulations. And then the owners were taking the paying guests, inside a 19-year-old cougar's enclosure without any protection, right? So it's a violation of FWC regulations, and it's certainly a violation of the Big Cat Public Safety Act. We've yet to hear back from U.S. Fish and Wildlife as to what they're going to do, if anything, about it. I worked with the investigators for Florida Fish and Wildlife, And the couple got a written warning because the couple said, "Oh, we just a bad error of judgment on our part. We promise not to do it again." Well, I've shown that they've done it again, so we're going to wait and see if there's going to be any repercussions. Now, an AZA accredited zoo is not going to allow you to do that. There are a handful of AZA accredited zoos that have tiger feedings and jaguar feedings, but they do that from about 2 feet back from the animal's enclosure. And generally it's either with tongs or through a chute. So there's not going to be hand feeding of any big cat. Roadside zoos haven't changed their, a lot of their behaviors are still doing that. ZAA is kind of in between. So again, it goes back to standards. You have AZA. Listen, would I prefer they're not doing that? I know some accredited sanctuaries that are still doing feedings of big cats from 2-3 feet away through a chute. Would I prefer that wasn't going on? Sure, but is it the worst of the infractions or the worst of the things that should be on our radar, animal welfare or human safety? Absolutely not. So you have to triage what you focus on.
I really like the way you say that, and that's exactly it. You have to triage it. You have to really determine where is it lie. I mean, there are so many, and again, we want to make sure that we're giving the inspectors proper due. There are so many people out there that are fighting for the welfare of the animals and the betterment of the animals. There are people that are out there that are keeping these facilities held to a standard that they need to be held to. So, we just want to make sure it's very clear that everybody understands. It's a very complicated topic, but here you have these inspectors, I'm sure it's like everything in the world, some good, some maybe not so good. But they have, they kind of have this vested interest from the AZA versus, say, the USDA, and how they go through that. And I imagine there must be so many complaints because people see so much abuse around. And I feel like we're much more conscious now about that. So it must be challenging also for the officers involved to determine, what am I going to go do with this or this? And so it's important, I think, you bring back in the human element of there are people in the field trying to do their best very often who may or may not have the ability to fully do what they feel they should.
It brings up a good point, because even for me, being in it for so many decades, in trying to keep track of all the exploiters and keep track of the different tiers of levels of accreditation and standards. In working with the Florida Fish and Wildlife officers, we had an instance, one of the cases I was working on, somebody took a full-grown tiger in a transport cage to a really high-end bar mitzvah in the Miami area. I mean, really high-end bar mitzvah. But here you have like probably a $50,000 party going on, and there's a full-grown tiger in a transport cage. And the first content that came to my attention was the family taking a picture in front of the transport cage, probably about 6 or 8 feet away, with no barrier, which is a violation of the Big Cat Public Safety Act. It's also a violation of Florida Fish and Wildlife standards, right? So what I came to learn in dealing with these 3 different officers for Florida Fish and Wildlife is that in the state of Florida, first of all, their requirement for a barrier between a Class 1 carnivore in a cage can be a piece of nylon rope or a stanchion like you see at a movie theater. That satisfies, right? I said, well, okay, well, first of all, that's egregiously not adequate. But 2, the pictures, the content that I've sent you in the video shows that this family is posing in front of this full-grown tiger with no barrier between the transport cage and the family. So they did a full investigation, got with the people involved, sent me the final disposition, the report, the investigative report, the interviews, and they showed pictures, sent me pictures where they had determined that in interviewing the people that supplied the tire, which was an exotic animal rental company based out of Miami, and they rent exotic animals all across the United States. They said that the family wanted a picture without the barrier, so that the people handling the cat took down the barrier so they could take pictures. And they said, but only for a short period of time, and then put the barrier back up. And in this business, this exotic animal rental company in Florida, in the Miami area, didn't even get a written warning, just a verbal warning, nothing, 0. And what I learned in dealing with the officers, all three officers for three different cases in Florida, is it's all interpretive. Like each of these officers had to interpret, whether it be a Florida state regulation, Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission regulation, or if you're dealing with Florida Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, it's going to be interpretive. Like, how do they interpret the Big Cat Public Safety Act? And then they take their case to some type of state attorney or a federal law attorney, and they have to decide, is it worth prosecuting? So there's all this, what you bring up is a good point. There's a lot of interpretation of these laws and regulations going on. So you've got different people with different visions of, they might say, well, that makes perfect sense, this isn't safe, but we've got this regulation, how do we interpret it?
Well, yeah, I didn't even realize there was that much gray area in multiple levels. So the case, like by design.
Yeah, so there was a case in Naples where I documented somebody that had a special tour at this a very, very antiquated old roadside zoo, and they've got a couple of white tigers in an enclosure. They let this family go behind the scenes with one of the employees, and they let the person put their hand up against the enclosure and touch the nose of a full-grown white tiger. And so I've got all the video and the picture content, and the guy is saying, "Oh, big kitty, soft nose," right? So we got all the documentation. A fabulous Florida Fish and Wildlife officer investigated the case, got interviews, filed charges, misdemeanor charges, submitted them to the state attorney, Florida Fish and Wildlife did, and it went on and on and on. And came back that the state attorney dropped the charges due to, quote, insufficient evidence. There you have it.
Wow.
So how does that, like, I can't even fathom that, right? So it's not, I'm not going to be able to do battle against the state attorney in Florida. But I mean, that's, so here you have a tiger at a bar mitzvah, not even a written warning. Here you have somebody touching a tiger in Naples, filed charges dismissed, dropped. A case in northern Florida in Panama City where a person goes in with a full-grown cougar, written warning, we promise not to do it again. I mean, so there you have three cases, three completely different outcomes, and it's all based on interpretation.
That's really an interesting thing as well, because we always find one of the biggest problems is even when you can get laws in place, enforcement is so challenging. And not the guys in the field, like we were talking about the officers, but exactly the district attorneys, the people that might be, I don't know, playing golf with the owner, of another zoo or the manager of a zoo. Right. These things seep out a little bit more, but there's always it's such a big step to get protections, and then such another massive one to get them enforced.
I was dealing with another case in Florida, and it's a ZAA accredited facility, and you got to be as far as a small zoo, the animal enclosures look nice, the animals appear healthy, but I've tracked their animals for over a decade, and they have ambassador animals. They have ambassador cheetahs, so they'll put cheetahs on leashes, and they have they call it they'll have special events, or you can do a cheetah walk where the keeper walks ahead of you with the cheetah on a leash. And but I mean, the animals look healthy, but that's allowed in Florida. That's allowed in Florida, and that's allowed actually with AZA. AZA still allows in their ambassador animal programs for their zoos with cheetahs. Two keepers, each holding a separate leash, to walk a cheetah on a leash, and that's considered two barriers for public safety. But in this case in Florida, at the ZAA accredited facility, I dealt with the Florida Fish and Wildlife officer who handles that district. And I said, well, first of all, like, here's cheetahs on tables on a leash, and the only thing separating them from the public for the special event is about 6 feet and a little piece of, white rope. Yep, that's acceptable. And this officer thought the world of this facility. And this is a place where also you can go in with their smaller cats, with their lynx and some other small cats. And he literally, I was on the phone with him for quite a while, he literally couldn't speak anything but praise. This is one of his favorite facilities. Anytime he had questions about hybrids or anything else, this was their go-to for him. So here you have an officer that thinks that that's all okay. And so you have, different levels of judgment. Now, on a positive note, We just recently, I just documented, put online just a few days ago, on a federal level, the very first case that was brought for an action for the Big Cat Public Safety Act was out of Texas, and that was a case about a year ago, or maybe it was 10 months ago, where a gentleman, I think it was a husband and wife, or a man and woman rather, were charged with trying to sell a margay and a jaguar, juvenile jaguar. And they were charged. And I mean, we were wondering because we hadn't heard anything for like 10 months. But I finally found that there was a disposition of the case. And the man was sentenced to 9 months in jail or prison. I'm not sure which. The woman was sentenced to like 2 years of probation. They confiscated some money at the time, but that's the first case of the Big Cat Public Safety Act that's been charged and prosecuted all the way. And we're hoping that I've been part of submitting another dozen cases to U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and we're awaiting disposition on those cases. So I'm hoping that, once you start sending the signal, these roadside zoos and these private owners are going to fall in order for the most part. They're not going to want to risk. It's just not fiscally even worth them fear of going to prison to make the money they're making. So I think that once you have a couple of cases that are prosecuted, I think that the most of the nefarious people are going to fall in line.
That is great to hear that that's a beautiful beginning to it. I know you guys worked so hard to get that passed, and there were so many people working so hard, and it has made a big difference. I think it's an incredible change. I mean, you can actually, there is a time now in the world where before and after that was passed and how animals are treated. And that changes the future tremendously for them, each one of them.
Here's how we empower everybody. You're mentioning Born Free. Born Free just had just an excellent webinar yesterday that I attended about the big cats in captivity. And they've got, not only the incident data report, a database report where you can go online and, like you said, you can search all the exotic animal incidents going back, across the country for decades. There's also U.S. Fish and Wildlife has a great wildlife crime tip reporting portal where you just go online and literally we submit our suspected violations of Big Cat Public Safety Act to U.S. Fish and Wildlife in a couple of different ways. One of them, though, I do on a personal level, is through this online. Just go to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. There's a wildlife. I think it's called the Wildlife Crime Tips Reporting, and literally it takes you 1 minute to put in the information that they're asking for. 1 minute, and submit it. And you can be a voice. And they also have a phone number. If you want to call and speak to someone to report that case, you can do that as well. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife has a way to do that. One that is just being released, coming out, that I'm really excited about. I started partnering together with the wonderful folks at Four Paws in the UK. And they've come out with a big cat reporting tool. And you can go online, and I've linked it from my Facebook page. You can go online, and it is really comprehensive. You can report suspected incidents where you've seen something in social media, online. It can be in person as well, but they're really looking for, where the eyes for these animals online. And if you see something that looks nefarious and suspect that it might be abuse or not following laws or local regulations, you can report that and submit content, and they will follow it up. And I'm helping them with a little on the, if there's a case in the U.S., which I just responded to yesterday about the facility. So it's the Four Paws, it's the big cat reporting tool. It's just a fabulous way where you as a member of the public can be the eyes for these sentient creatures that can't speak for themselves. So it's a really exciting time to be part of this, right, Eric? Because there's so many ways for us to get involved on a really easy basis, right? Where in the old days, it's like, you're going to write a letter to somebody and hope that somebody...
Right. Yeah, exactly. That it's amazing to see how modern technology can really serve, because everybody loves these animals and wants to see them do their best. And, it's always amazing to sort of bring this information out to let people change the story of how they understand animals are being treated, because we now have access to get everybody involved. And this is incredible. We've put the link down here. It's in the comments. If you guys are anywhere, and the same with the FWS, if you are out and you see something that just upsets you, we always know what's wrong instinctually. We as people, we see it, we might be able to justify it, but we see it and we recognize it. If you see something, definitely reach out. And that is amazing to know, Jeff, that we have that power. That is really beautiful, because even if the AZA can do the best they can do, which may not be what we think is the best that should be done, and the same with with the other inspectors at the USDA, this allows a wider variety, and that's exactly what they need as well, because so much happens in the shadows. I see Debbie is on here as well, and hey, Debbie, thank you for joining. And I want to say hi to Maxwell as well. And now, Deborah and I used to work together on scrubs, and the interesting thing is, back in the day, we used to have animals on set, and I never thought about the concept of an ambassador animal. We had a bear on set. We had a lot of different animals on set, but one year we had a rat party, and it was a circus-themed rat party. No, circus theme. And we had elephants, and I can't remember the other animals. I don't know, you might remember some of them, Debbie. But it was shocking to me to go to this Hollywood rat party and see these. What's like, what is an elephant doing in the middle of Burbank right here? And Jeff, when you mentioned that the AZA has different rules of ambassador versus the other standards, is I believe we were talking about. I'm really curious to learn more about in time about how the industry gets away with that as well, because all of us were there and we just didn't, we knew it was wrong, but we didn't have an outlet. Like you said, what are you going to do? Write a letter to somebody? And now we can report it, and those people can be investigated by people who care, which are these investigators that are always out trying to help animals.
Yeah, and sadly in entertainment, it's a whole nother genre. That's an as you and I have discussed in the past, in the United States, all animals are considered property, not sentient creatures. So you have all these laws, regulations, rules, entertainment, zoological world, that are based on property. They're not always based on sentient creatures. There's and they can vary, like you said, there's a difference between having a law and being able to enforce it, right? So I had another case where recently somebody brought, I think it was in February, somebody had a wannabe rapster was having a birthday party in North Carolina and had rented a club, and it was a very high-end birthday party. I mean, really high-end, driving up in Rolls Royces and everything else. And here's this full-grown tiger in a transport cage out in front of the venue, and little rope around it. And I sent some content to the powers that be, and I'm still waiting to hear back if they're going to investigate it. But I did check, because somebody reached out to me and said, well, in that geographic region, they just recently passed a bill that prohibited exotic cats and elephants and bears from in circuses from going around. So the powers that be ran it up back to figure out if this might violate something. Came back and said, no, well, if a circus can't perform there, but you're still allowed, if you have a private owner that has a tiger that wants to bring it to a party, you can still do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, because I guess each of these are like a stress test to find the loopholes, find the places we have to patch.
We shared challenge accepted.
Exactly. And I really thank you, Jeff, for always being so vigilant and keeping an eye and keeping this topic going. It's not easy. The way that the press doesn't really portray it, it's not a topic that gets picked up as often as it should. But like you had mentioned, thank goodness for technology, because here we are, all of us friends, all of us having this conversation, all of us looking for that solution to the better future. And it's interesting, you're talking about them being property, and that is the root of our issue, huh? It's like we need to bring back empathy, sympathy, love, kindness, understanding, and that is going to be the only way that we can move forward, because moving forward through this way that it has been defined over the last 100 years, as we see, doesn't work.
And you can't be deterred, right? Like I get just hit up every single day, just nonstop. I'm one of the most nefarious roadside zoos in the country still left standing is Doc Annals Myrtle Beach Safari in South Carolina. So I continue to call them out, and I just got a nasty gram this morning from somebody, and I called them out because they go there and you can cuddle with everything. They put the big cats behind a transparent barrier, sometimes glass, sometimes not, so that you can still pose next to the cubs. But I called out somebody, and I, just trying to educate them, and the nasty grim I got was, just shut up and enjoy the damn video, and that's, but you can't be deterred, because we're just seeking to educate. And if you do it respectfully and you engage in a respectful conversation, I've had just as many wonderful people reach out and say, I had no idea that he's a convicted felon, and that he pleaded guilty to wildlife trafficking and money laundering charges that tied to human trafficking. Had no idea. So we just need to continue to educate, have thick skin, and as we've shared before, we will not be denied or defeated in being the voice for these sentient creatures that can't speak for themselves. And I encourage the public, like, I'm a lone wolf. I'd encourage the public to get the press involved. I got involved with a wonderful reporter in the Naples area that ended up writing 4 separate articles about this roadside zoo and the public interaction with the white tiger. And even if we didn't get that person convicted, what we did was we raised public awareness, right? And that's invaluable, right? It's not about the convictions, it's about the knowledge, right? Empowering people with knowledge. We all make better decisions, not a right or a wrong, just a best decision. And we all move that needle forward in, humankind evolving in a positive direction.
Yes, absolutely. Educated consumer is our key to change. And, Jeff, you'd mentioned on a show before, and I want to just put it back out there for everybody. Go see for yourself. If you are on the fence and think, I don't know if I want to walk away from this exhibit or fall into, you're on the fence, you're right there. Do I want to be in the zoo? You mentioned they have these wonderful opportunities to go look at behind the scenes. So, and I was looking, I think at Lowry Zoo, maybe, or Tampa, and it was like $25 to go behind the scenes. It's cheap. Cincinnati charges like $150. They might not want people to see as much, but the zoos are proud of what they do and they want people to see it. They think people are there. And so the best thing people can do is to go back, learn by themselves, and make a decision if they feel they're comfortable with how things are.
Yeah.
And
whether it's a roadside zoo, a sanctuary, an AZA, ZAA accredited facility, any facility, right? It's like you just take they all conduct behind the scenes tours and empower yourself. And if after you've seen the whole place, you say, well, I still want to patronize a zoo, then that's not our audience, right? Because they're making a decision based on information. Our audience is the greater part of the population that just really has no idea. We call it the other side of the zoo, or, and again, I never thought, I just recently, through one of these cases in Florida, I became engaged in conversation and correspondence with someone that was a longtime volunteer at one of these facilities. And when she first reached out, I'm like, yeah, this is not going to go well, right? Because we're so at opposite ends. And this person just had no idea that the content that they were publishing online, they had no idea that it was sending a misguided message and a dangerous message to the public, that you could actually have physical contact with, class 1 carnivores. So never say never, because I wouldn't have thought that I would have been engaging in a positive, in a civil, very respectful conversation with this individual. And that individual is now trying behind the scenes to make a positive difference at a roadside zoo, right? So that's what it's all about. It's like, let's just all work together. I'm not here to demonize anybody. I want a better environment for the animals. If they're going to have to be in captivity, I want the best environment possible. And I want that both the employees and the public to be safe.
See, and that's exactly, and that is, that's not a big ask ultimately. And but I think there's a change that we're watching happen. Sierra was showing me this morning that she found a recently published article, a research paper showing about zoos, and it was kind of a trick title. It was like, zoos, should they be in modern society or something? And of course, it's written by sort of a pro-zoo stance. But the interesting aspect was, so their solution was, they are essential to conservation. But there was a lot of misguided information in it, which I thought was interesting, because they took those foundational arguments that are false and ran with them, like we do conservation and all this. But the one thing that they did say was that in order for zoos to fulfill the role that they intend to, they need to start listening to the wants and desires of social media and the people that care about the animals. So the zoo industry is listening, and this is a golden opportunity for us to go in and just make our wedge and try to push changes in the most positive fashion. And we've been seeing recently some zoos going out of business due to decline of audience, as well as expenses and costs just rising up. It's a crazy business model from the 1900s, keep a live animal and feed them and then spend all this money. So in a way, if the zoos have to get better, we're hoping on our end that that'll force them to either make it work or get out of the biz.
Yeah, two in response to that, two things. One is to answer you backtrack a little bit. I have not seen, I've seen some of the mid-sized zoos be either forced out of business or close to forced out of business or put up for sale. There's a couple there, or there's three that I know of that are mid-size up for sale, including all the animals. But what I've unfortunately seen is on the smaller scale, the family-run little Zoo to You and the outreach and all the small ambassador animals. I've seen just a exponential increase in the number of those very small facilities popping up all over. And with regard to, it's an opportune time to have that dialogue with the zoo world to move the needle forward. I gotta be completely transparent. It's not been my experience that any of them will talk to their stakeholders, because most of these zoos are run by tax dollars, right? Or heavily subsidized by tax dollars. And it's been my experience in the animal welfare world, they will have little to no communication whatsoever with their stakeholders, the public. And I'm not going to be dissuaded by that. I'll continue being, the gnat that just drives them crazy until they, and whether they affect the change behind the scenes without publicly acknowledging these improvements, that's fine. But it would be nice, since we're their stakeholders, we're the ones paying the tax dollars that heavily subsidize these operations, and we're talking, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollar operations. I would have hoped to be. We've requested civil dialogue. We're not out there saying they're evil, they need to go away. We're saying that zoos are not going to go away. We'd like to be a part of the conversation toward helping them improve. And it's been my personal, and continues to be my personal and professional experience, they absolutely will have nothing to do with it. And that's too bad, right? That speaks volumes to their intent.
I agree. We keep trying. We talked to you early on about this, and you kind of let us know your experience with it. We keep trying, and nothing ever happens. Now, right now, we're publicly as well extending another invitation to Thane Maynard from the Cincinnati Zoo to come on by and join us for a civil Q&A. Only conversation is really going to move this forward. And I think you're right. It is by design. They will never bring us into that fold.
And right, why? Like I know it's a privilege to be part of the panel for the screening of your incredible film. It's like the audience is going to be just seeking knowledge, right? We're not going to be hostile. So why would they not want to be part of that conversation to say, look, we are being above board and transparent, and we appreciate your input, and we want to move the needle. And I just am dumbfounded why the zoological world, if they're the gold standard, refuses to have communication with their stakeholders who are paying the tax dollars that heavily fund these operations. It just doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. And beautifully said too. It really, that's it. We're paying for it and we get no say in it.
Right.
And that, it really, and they're very, very defensive. I find it interesting that if we had exaggerated things in the movie, they should be out publicly calling us to task. Because we're very careful when we make movies. We don't exaggerate them. We follow facts. We follow the argumentation, but we want a discussion to come out of it. So we're very disappointed that they have never engaged. And I know they probably never will. We're going to keep asking. And that brings me back to May 28th, Harambe Day. Everybody, Jeff is going to be one of our panelists for the Q&A. And you can, if you're in Cincinnati, come join us in person. You'll get to talk to Jeff in person. And really, he's an amazing person to get. It's like a wealth of knowledge. So I think the Q&A is going to be incredible.
Well, yeah, I was thrilled that my colleague from the conservation game, Tim Harrison, he's just been an inspiration to me and a mentor in the animal welfare world, and he's taking time out of his schedule to join us that day for both the protest and for the screening and the Q&A, which is going to be fabulous. And kudos to you and Sierra and the team on Harambe for facilitating the virtual Q&A for anybody that might not be able to attend in person. So it's going to be it's a day of empowerment, right? A day that people can be part of the solution, empower themselves to be part of change. And that's exciting.
Oh, well, we're really excited to have you guys joining us. It's amazing. We all worked on different projects, but we're all working on the same project, to help the animals out. And this is going to be an exciting day for us to get to really speak up, like I always say, for one of our closest living relatives that is forced into captivity right now. So we still have a ways to go. And thank you guys for joining us on that day. I think it's going to be incredible because it will be a day of education, and education definitely is empowerment and change. So we're really looking forward to the wide variety of topics that are going to come up on that day. And I've got about another 1,000 questions for you on that day as well, Jeff, as I always do.
Look forward to it.
Great.
And thank you. Thanks. Great gratitude to you and Sierra and the whole team for Harambe team for putting this together. I mean, it was I couldn't be more thrilled to be part of it. And I'm really excited about the potential of the collective synergy of, again, empowering your audience and all those people that want it. You get asked so many, I'm sure you get asked like I do. It's like, how can I help, right? And exactly. Finally, we have a means to the end to say, here's how you can help, right? Be there in person, be at the protest, facilitate a protest in your area in front of your either roadside zoo or ZAA or AZA accredited zoo, or overseas EAZA. Here's your chance, right? Be a voice, right? Every one person can make a difference.
That is absolutely. That is perfectly said, Jeff. Exactly. And that does show the power. One person can make a huge change. So we're looking forward to seeing all of those people that day. We're looking forward to seeing everybody else that, wants to interact and talk to us. And if you have friends that work at the zoo, if you have friends that are zookeepers, if you have friends that have children that want to go to the zoo, all of these groups, we would love to open the discussion to everybody. If there's any way everybody can join, we want it to be as multi-layered and multifaceted and multi-angled as possible to really get our best sense. So thanks again for joining us today. And, thank you for helping us clear up a little bit about a roadside zoo versus an accredited zoo. And I think as we've learned, we know roadside zoos, as far as the accreditation goes, there's many moving parts, a lot of gray areas. And it really is going to come down to not trusting that as a brand that you can definitely guarantee is 100% animal positive, but use your own eyes, your own education, and be the eyes for the animals and be the voice for them. So thanks again, Jeff. It was great to have you on today. Can't wait for Harambe Day, May 28th.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Eric.
All right. Thanks again. Thanks for joining. See you soon. And there we go. Jeff Kremer, one of our good friends, amazing activist for animals. And as he mentioned, we're going to have Tim Harrison as well. And for everybody, if you have not seen the conservation game, please watch it. It's available online. It's available everywhere. It's an extremely important movie. The director has made a few other extremely important movies as well. And one's called The Elephant in the Room. Watch that too. That movie will blow your mind as well. There's amazing amount of work. Director is Michael Weber. Great director, amazing work, amazing voice. And he empowers people like Jeff and Tim to get their messages out. And that's what we do as documentarians. And we're excited to go from documentarians to really being able to sponsor a full day of activism and discussion about how we can change the world. And I would just want to leave with one last thing really quickly. As we discuss conservation and as we discuss what are the zoo's intentions, we were talking about Cross River gorillas yesterday. Happy Cross River Gorilla Day was yesterday. One thing we came across that I thought was really fascinating, and I just wanted to show everybody this. Zoos always mention they're there for conservation. Now, the reason I keep bringing this up is that we hear the arguments. Everybody's grown up with the arguments that zoos are conservation and everything else. But our job is to critically examine that and determine and help people have more information. Is that true? So one thought I'd like to leave everybody with, and it's a little bit of a sloppy screenshot here, but I don't know if everybody can see this. These are estimated global populations of gorillas in the wild. Western lowland gorillas are over 300,000. Eastern lowland gorillas around 500,000. Mountain gorillas around 1,000. And there are 300 to under 300 cross river gorillas left in the world. If zoos were very focused on truly saving endangered animals, wouldn't they be focused on the cross river gorillas where there's 300 left, as opposed to the mountain gorillas where there's over 300,000 in the wild? Not that those are not in danger, but they're the only ones that are bred in captivity for zoo use. So does that argument really hold water? Anyway, thank you for everybody for joining us today. Remember, question it, keep your eyes open, keep your hearts open, keep your eyes on the animals, see how things look, see how things are going. Remember that the accreditation may be a step up, but it may not be the solution that we need, and we got to keep making our changes. So thanks everybody for joining today. Thank you, Jeff, for being here. Thank you, Debbie. Thanks, Maxwell, for joining us as well, and everybody else who participated in the conversation. And we shall see you guys soon and keep talking more about all the different aspects that gorillas face in modern society as we head our way